Just where do you draw the line? So
Totally.
if you
I don't
take
know the
again,
answer to that.
if you take again my photograph from Krakow, right? Am I the first person to shoot that angle? No.
Probably
Like,
not.
certainly not, right? Had I some photo directly in mind when I went there? Like, no. It's like I just followed the sun and I saw where's the light, where is it coming, and then it's like all the experience that you have as a photographer of like when you go out and you see that. So is it a copy of something? No. But the very frequent argument being made in court by the opponents is like, well, look, now we search for Krakow, St. Mary Basilica, and we find like 100 photos that look very similar.
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 434 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. I'm your host, Matt Payne, and today's episode is one that you won't want to miss. My guest is the incredibly insightful Nico Trinkaus, a fine art travel photographer who turned his passion into a full-time career over a decade ago. In this conversation, we dive deep into his journey from hobbyist to professional, and then shift gears into a topic that affects so many of us in the photography community: image theft. Nico's personal experience discovering his stolen images being sold as souvenirs completely without his knowledge is a wild ride, and one that led him to launch PhotoClaim, a company that's helping photographers fight back against copyright infringement. We also unpack the differences between copyright laws in the United States, Europe, and Canada, talk about licensing struggles in the age of exposure, and explore how to stay visible online without sacrificing your creative soul to the algorithm gods. And here's a little bonus. We have a very fun giveaway at the end of this episode, so you'll want to definitely stick around for that. All right, let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Nico Trinkaus. All right, Nico Trinkaus, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Hey Matt, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, of course, man. I am really excited for this conversation because it hopefully touches on a subject that I see come up all of the time for photographers. And what I've found so fascinating about this particular topic is that depending on where you live, it's completely different for you. So hopefully you'll be able to educate us on some of those differences. But for people who aren't familiar with you and your photography, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Nico Trinkaus. I'm a German photographer, but I'm now living in Portugal. I kind of like to call myself more European than German, actually, because United States, we're from the United States and we're like in Europe, like all the different countries. But like my wife is Polish, we met in Czech Republic, now we live in Portugal, so I'm like all over Europe, and that is also what goes right away into my photography, because it's all travel photography. I call it timeless travel to be my style. So that is what I do on the photography side. And aside of that, people may know me for running PhotoClaim, a company that helps photographers with copyright protection.
Yes. And that's why we're here, of course. But yeah. I'm a little bit jealous of Europeans and their access to so much diversity in such a small geographical region, because it's funny, like I'll talk to people about stuff I do here. I'm like, oh yeah, it's like a 10-hour drive. And they're like, that's like the entirety of Europe,
Yes. And 10 hours is like, you have such a diversity. It's incredible. It's like, this is what I really love about Europe, and like what makes this also still my most favorite topic, actually. So I do travel a lot, but really like most of my travel is in Europe, because I just love it to just go to, even in Europe, you still have like undiscovered places that most people will have never heard of. And they can be just like an hour drive out of a major capital. So now I'm in Lisbon, and like you go an hour into the countryside, you will have like super beautiful landscapes, and like you will find nothing of that on Instagram. It's like it's as if this place doesn't exist, even though it is in a very touristic country, and like it's an hour drive from Lisbon. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and to some degree, like, let's try to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, Yeah, I mean, as soon as it blows up on Instagram, it's like that place gets completely trashed, and we'll talk about that later. But well, let's talk about your photography journey. How did you first get into photography, and what led you to make it your full-time profession back in 2014?
So it started with travel. That was first and foremost it for me. So when I was turning 18, just out of high school, in Germany we still had like obligatory military service, to which I was excused. I didn't have to do it for some medical reasons, but all my friends did. So I had like a year in which I was like off, and they had to do military stuff. So I was like professional poker player for a year. That was like earning me some money and gave me the freedom to actually start traveling, which I didn't do in my childhood, teenage years too much. So I just went around Europe for those €1 Ryanair flights and like saw different cities, and was just taking like a point and shoot and just to capture memories just for myself. And then in university I did an exchange semester abroad in Prague. And there I came across the works of Elia Locardi and Miroslav Petrasco, who did HDR photography at that time. And I was fascinated by like seeing how they captured that beautiful city in which I was in that moment. And when I saw how they did that and how they worked with like Photoshop to, or back then Photomatics, to get like the HDR stuff together, that was like fascinating me, because I already had some experience with Photoshop doing some logo design for like football online managers, just like random hobby as like a teenager. And I was like, hey, what if I can bring that together and just like, you know, travel, take photos, but actually make those photos look cool with like digital editing? I'm like, okay, let me try that. So yeah, my girlfriend at the time, who thankfully became my wife, even though served as my first tripod, because it was like a little point and shoot camera where you didn't have bracketing, so you had to go in and like change the exposure and like, you know, how do you do this? So that's how it started. And then I got the first DSLR in 2011. Then at some point I took the inspiration from Miroslav Petrasco, who did like a daily blog for like every day put an HDR photo out there. I was like, okay, let me try the same thing. So I started the blog, and for like 4 months every day I uploaded a photo. And that's how we got started, until the point that in 2013, like my first photo got viral, which led ultimately then also to the birth of PhotoClaim. And then I did see then, actually that was the point when I noticed like, if they all pay me, I actually can make a living from this. And I was always like having a bit of entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I was like, actually, let's give this a shot. Let's try if I can make it as a photographer. And that's the story ever since.
Nice. Yeah, I had to laugh when you said Photomatics, because that was right around my upbringing as a photographer as well. And man, what a like it's kind of triggering a little bit, just because of like how bad it was in some ways.
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
images, I mean, I don't know about your photography, but my photography back then was horrendous.
Yes. No, definitely. It's like it sometimes is painful to look back at some of the photos, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I did spend a little time learning about this viral photo you're describing. And if I'm not mistaken, it's like this amazing cityscape with a lightning bolt coming into the building. Is that the same image? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So this is my hometown, Berlin, in Germany. So this is like the TV tower, the highest structure there. And we went to, like, it's a pretty iconic location. It's like a little balcony that is like on the fire escape of like a building, so you can kind of get access to it somewhat easily. And we went there to shoot the sunset, and I didn't honestly expect the thunderstorm to happen at that point. I think it wasn't forecasted even. And we were standing there and there's like a thunderstorm. We're like, okay, let's keep shooting, you know, like let's do this. Only later did I realize, like, was it the best idea to stand like on like the top balcony with like a metal tripod while there's a thunderstorm happening? I'm like, I don't know, but I got the shot. The shot like Yeah, I'm still super happy with that. And I uploaded it on 500px. Another
Oh, yes,
of those
of course.
things, like, it's really dating us, but it's like, yeah, 500px got viral, and I had the first press agency that reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, can we represent you for that image? Can we push that image out into the media?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, sure, go ahead." And then I was like wanting to know who's using this, like who actually buys it. I asked them, "Can you tell me, like, to whom did you sell it?" And they're like, "Yeah, we can tell you, but like we bill like 2 months later, so in 2 months we can let you know." And like in Germany, they sold it to one of the main weekly magazines, and it was like a big feature on like the second and third page in the magazine. And I was like, I want to know that. I want to buy that magazine and have it for myself, just to have that. It's a nice accomplishment. So I'm like, well, if they tell me that 2 months later, I can't get my hands on it. And so I actually then used the Google reverse image search to just have a look, where do my photos, where does that photo show up? And then I saw it like on Dutch television, I saw it on a bunch of English newspapers and so on. And then I asked the agency, so did you sell it to them? And they're like, yeah, so we did sell it to the Mirror, we did sell it to the Telegraph, but like that TV channel, no, we don't know this one. And I'm like, okay, this airline has used it. Have you sold it to them? We will confirm. Okay, there's this one. Have you sold it to them? No, we have not. And that was for me like, okay, what's happening here? It's like suddenly like the photo shows up everywhere, and like you don't know to whom you sold it, and then to some you clearly say you didn't sell it. Okay. So at that time, I was like just sitting down, looking at my blog and going through all my photos on the blog, right-click, search with Google, and made an Excel list. And I had like, I think at that time, found like 130 commercial uses of my photos on the internet, which was really like, this was like 5-star hotel, international chains, international airlines, travel agents, like everything. And I was like, crap, it's like 130 times my photo is being used commercially. And at that point, this was the first time I made a sale of that photo. Before that, it was just my hobby, it was just my blog. But I was like, if this already would sell my photo 130 times, well, I could easily live from that. And I was like getting furious, right? Like, how? I mean, come on, it's like you're basically destroying my dream of being a photographer by just stealing my photo instead of buying it from me. And yeah, that is basically how things started, how I then looked to have a lawyer and like try to do something about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a very similar experience, kind of like a first wake-up call moment in 2011 because I had photographed, it's kind of cool because it'll never happen again in our lifetime, but there was a transit of Venus across the sun, and I photographed it at this really awesome location in my hometown in Colorado Springs of the Garden of the Gods, and there's this rock formation called Kissing Camels, and it's like a hole in the rock. So I had the sun in the hole of the rock, and then I had Venus transiting the sun, which it was just like super crazy cool. And like I'd planned it all out using photo pills and all this stuff, and consequently, like just kind of happened randomly. But like later that same year, a couple of months after that, there was this huge wildfire that hit the Colorado Springs. Like it was all over the world news. Like hundreds of homes were destroyed in this fire, and it was like, I think I made some kind of Twitter post about my photo and like how sad I was that the neighborhood near that photo was burned down. And like somehow people like attributed my photo with the fire, and then it just like went viral and all these news organizations were using it. And I was just like, what is happening? And of course, like you, like none of them like asked me for permission. None of them paid me. I mean, it was everywhere. It was wild. And all I could do was like, oh, I guess I could write a blog post about this experience and how stupid I feel right now, but it's a huge problem, right? So speaking of stories, I actually learned about you through a really interesting social media post that you had made where you shared this wild story about finding like all of these photographs that you've taken being sold as souvenirs at a ton of shops in a small European village. And I was hoping that you could share that story with us today.
So I have them here actually, so at least a few of them. So I actually have brought some of these souvenirs back home because I did have to buy a few of them just to have the evidence of that, of course. But yeah, so that was actually like with Krakow, I have like a bit of a history because that place, I was shooting there in 2014. So this photograph is still one of those older HDR photographs. And already in 2018, I think, I went back the first time and like I didn't know it, but there was like the World Youth Day when the Catholics are gathering and the Pope was visiting the town. And I was just passing through on my way to the Polish mountains. And actually then going from the airport to the bus station, I get out of the bus station and there is like magazines, leaflets everywhere, whereas like exactly this photo with the Pope on it and the Pope is just like raising a hand in greeting. And I'm like, wait, what is happening? And so that photo is just, it's my most stolen photo because it just ranks for Krakow as like the number 3, number 4 item on the Google image search. So I knew, okay, we come back to Krakow now. We made actually the PhotoClaim Christmas party in Krakow. And so I was just telling the team already jokingly, you know, like as part of the Christmas party, we need to actually go through the souvenir shops and like see what we find. And when we were meeting up already, one of my team members was coming to me like, Nico, I found your photo, but like on a massive scale. And so we went afterwards into this shop and they had like everything, right? Like be it pocket knives, be it magnets, be it bottles, be it like any souvenir you could imagine was done with my photo. It's like in that whole souvenir shop, I think they had like 5 different photos only and like 1,000 products. So it's like they did absolutely everything with that photo. And then I went again to the Polish mountains, which is like maybe like 100 kilometers away from Krakow, and there we were in the little village. And I walk around the village and like I find the bus stop where you have like the commercial bus operators and like they basically had it under the roof. There's like a big advertisement banner and just like the triangle under the roof was again my photo. And it's like, you can't walk there without stumbling upon it. It's crazy.
That's wild. So they basically just lifted it off Google image search, I'm guessing?
Yeah, 100% sure. They will always say they found it somewhere on some Russian website where it wasn't clear that it's copyrighted, blah, blah, blah. But like this website of mine is just performing so well in Google that I know they type in Krakow, they see the photo, they take it, that's it.
Right. And of course they don't reach out to you to ask if they can do that or to ask if how much it would cost or any of that stuff.
All that information is on the website.
I was going to say.
There's big, like, the photo requires licensing. Here's how you buy a license. No, nothing.
Wow. All right. Well, so, I mean, I feel like you're the first person I've ever talked to that has experienced this problem on this large of a scale. I mean, I feel like anyone who's been doing photography for like 10 years or more, like, it's going to happen to you eventually at some point, but not quite to this degree. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like how serious is the problem of image theft today, especially for landscape and travel photographers? Like, do you think the industry is waking up to how widespread this problem really is?
It's really difficult to say. I think most people still completely underestimate it. So you hear people complaining about, the stock agencies are selling cheaper and cheaper and the licensing prices are all the time going down and so on. What people in the US don't know is just how broken copyright is in Europe. So you always look at things from your own perspective. And in Europe, it's crazy. I mean, I'm German, and when I started PhotoClaim, I was in Germany, and I started PhotoClaim basically because such service at that time didn't exist. So when we started that, pretty much within the same next 12 months, there were like a couple of other services like Pixie, CopyTrack, LaPixa, like plenty of other services coming out. all based in Germany, all based in Berlin actually. So it's like that was the hub for it. Reason being that the German copyright is A, pretty strong, and B, has a very good history. So already 20 years ago, you would have it in the media that some photographers made like countless of lawsuits against blogs and forums on the internet because they used the photos, even in a non-commercial context. Okay, so PhotoClaim and me, I only go against commercial infringers. So I don't care if anybody privately puts it on their Facebook or like in a forum. I don't care. But back then there were some photographers who went after that. So this was blowing up in the media a lot, and for understandable reasons. And what that did was it educated the German society and was giving people like, hey, you cannot just use a photo. So you know, there's much more public awareness about copyright. In the US, I also see that there's much more of an awareness of it simply because the penalties can be very high. So for that reason alone, people are usually aware of it. When we see at PhotoClaim like where the infringements are, it's like between Europe and the US, there's probably 85% happening in Europe and only 15% of the infringements happening in the US. Simply because you have those potentially really high damages that are scaring people off. Now, in Europe, there is no such thing as punitive damages. So, and the other thing is, in the US, you don't necessarily always separate the civil claim and like the kind of like criminal liability, but you can say like, okay, if it's a criminal offense, we award extra damages toward the person that was harmed, right? In Europe, you don't have this. So in Europe, anything regarding like a criminal penalty will always be paid to the state, never paid to the person that was harmed. So all I can claim as a photographer in Europe is the licensing fee that they had to pay me if they would have licensed the photo. So what that means effectively is, as a company, why on earth would you want to buy a photo? Because like you steal the photo and you get busted, you pay the same thing as if you would have bought the license in the first place. But you know that most photographers will never find out about it. And even if they find out about it, they don't know what to do about it. And so therefore I have some like frequent infringers that are just like, okay, just whenever you find your photo on our website, just reach out to us and we will pay you. You don't need to take a lawyer. Just like let's do this easy. And I'm like, guys, that's just so not okay. And those are big companies. Those are big like they need a lot of photos, and they just for them it's better this way. And this is why I think like people really underestimate the scope of this. And I don't know, another fun story is actually like fun. In Bulgaria, I was like one of the first photographers to go to the court for copyright. And I talked with my lawyer back then. He's a great guy. He looked a lot of it into things, and like, yeah, let's try. Let's go to the court. Let's put this. And when I was visiting Bulgaria the second time, he was like, hey, Nico, actually, do you have some extra time that we could do some interviews? It's like really important to make some media awareness and like do things. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do it. I'm in the plane. I'm landing in Bulgaria. He's calling me again. Okay, so we have 3 interviews scheduled. I'm like, what's going on? So it's like he scheduled something with like the first national TV, then something with Bloomberg TV in Bulgaria, and something with some newspaper. And it came out that actually there were like 5 cases ever in court in the history of Bulgaria regarding copyright of photographs, and 3 of them were mine. And me doing that actually gave photographers there the kind of like the inspiration of like, hey, we actually can do this, because people were before just saying, oh, the courts are corrupt, or like nothing works here and like nobody can do anything about it, so why even bother? And then they saw that I did that and like, oh, okay, so maybe we can actually try it. And like my lawyer said was that they even made my name into a verb, so that to Trinkaus someone is to go after someone to ask for damages for copyright infringement, which is wild, but yeah. So
that's awesome.
I still somehow think we're in the beginning of this, even though it's been now about 10 years that I'm working on this, but the problem is not going away.
Yeah, and I suppose in Europe, the problem is probably even more challenging because I'm guessing every country has slightly different laws, even though it's the EU. I'm guessing like every country has a slightly different kind of law on the books of how this is supposed to be handled, which probably makes that incredibly exhausting for a lawyer.
Not just incredibly exhausting for lawyers, even impossible for a single lawyer. So it's something that, like, really I'm biting on stones for like the past 10 years when it comes to this, because you need to go most of the time to the places of jurisdiction where actually the infringer is. So if a company from the Czech Republic is stealing my photo, I need to go to the court in the Czech Republic. And I need to do that in Czech language. And like we have probably 20 languages in Europe, and like now finally, like since 1 year, 1.5 years, I'm actually doing this now a lot for my own photography. So we don't have it yet at PhotoClaim. I'm first trying this myself to see how can we do this, how can we roll this out and actually use this to help other photographers to use now the tools that are available of having like automatic AI-assisted translations, to be able to go to the courts. There's like a European small claim procedure with claims up to €5,000, which is pretty much always applicable. And those are supposed to be all in writing. So you actually can use your written replies, and once you have the English templates, you just translate it with AI to the language of the court. And that works pretty well so far. But it's again something that most lawyers don't know about, because again, the lawyers, they know their jurisdiction. They don't know cross-border jurisdiction. So this is really a complicated thing that, I'm working on it. I hope like within the next year or so, we have something to share with photographers about that, so that you can use it as a guidance and like do your claims. But yeah.
Yeah. So for people who suspect that their photography has been stolen, but they feel completely overwhelmed by the legal side of everything, what are the first steps that you think people should take?
Yeah, I mean, very first step is just have a look in the reverse Google image search if you find anything where your photo is being used. So this is like the first actionable thing, like use a Chrome browser, right click, and then you can see like search this image with Google, and then you can see like, I think it's like by now it's Google Lens, and you have like find the source of this image. And then what it does, it shows you where this image does pop up. So if you have some photo where you suspect this is getting the most traffic on your website, for example, and you know, like a lot of Google requests are coming there, then this is the one that has probably the highest likelihood of being stolen. Or if it went viral on any platform, have a look at that. Then as to what you can do once you discover that, basically you have, I want to say 3, but you actually have 4 options. So of course, and that's the one that I actually don't have in my mind anymore, you could write by yourself to the infringer, which I, out of experience, really I'm not advising anybody anymore, because whenever I did that, I just got insulted by people, and like there's so much negative energy with this that I actually want to be away from that whole process. So because that really cuts my creativity completely. So it's like it's my everlasting challenge to find the balance between doing copyright and stepping away from it and not having all this negative energy around it, and to be actually in my creativity. So that leaves you with the option to take a lawyer, and just find a lawyer in that jurisdiction and have that lawyer doing the work. There are agencies similar to PhotoClaim that are doing post-licensing, which means they write an automatic message to the infringer in which they say, look, we found this photo on your page, this is the photographer, we believe you didn't pay, so to make that happen, please now pay for the licensing of that. The other option is service like PhotoClaim, where we actually are not doing post-licensing, but we give it to a lawyer. So we are basically, you can see us as the middleman between the photographer and the lawyer, and we bring them together and make sure that everything is running smoothly on all sides, and the documents get handed to wherever they need to be handed, and all these things. But it's still a completely legal enforcement process. I have to say, I think that is the best approach, and I can tell you why. And again, the problem in Europe is there are no penalties for the copyright infringement, as I already said. So if I do a post-licensing, it personally never occurred to me that I would want to do that. So that's why PhotoClaim was set up the way it is from the very beginning, because this way the lawyer fees have to be paid on top of the license fee by the opponent. So there's at least this little bit of penalty that should make people think twice for the future, because they see, okay, I need to pay for the license and I need to pay for the lawyer. The other agencies, they cannot charge that on top, because only the lawyer fees are actually refundable. And so there it's a bit of a business decision. Depends also on how good you are with knowing your licenses. So you, for example, if you don't know exactly to whom you sold your photos and you don't know exactly who's allowed to use your photos, you can't work with PhotoClaim at this point, because we don't go first and ask, hey, did you license this? Can you maybe prove your license and so on? No, we assume that you know to whom you licensed it, and if they didn't have a license, then we right away go with the legal way, because in my opinion, that's the only fair thing that I can do for my clients. So from me as a photographer to my clients, because they pay me my licensing fee, and why should anybody that steals my photo only pay the same, or not have a penalty for this, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's kind of funny too, because it's almost like you don't want to make it to where people never, this can sound really bad, but I kind of hope people steal my photos. It's it's a nice way to make a little bit of income. Although to your point, it's a pain in the butt to get the money. But I find that by and large, a lot of the people that are doing this, typically they probably weren't going to pay what you end up getting paid at the end of the day. They probably would have been willing to pay $100 for an image, but not a $1,500 fine or whatever. So it's a little bit different, I feel like, in the United States versus Europe in terms of how that's structured, like you had mentioned before. But I do think it's an interesting psychological discussion from that perspective.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, this is what my opponents will always bring up in court, right? It's they will always say oh yeah, sorry, we didn't know, and even there, but why shouldn't we just pay the same as what a photo costs on Shutterstock? And then it's well, I don't put my photos on Shutterstock for good reasons. It's I can't sell my photo for €2. I'm terribly sorry. If you believe that's the value you want to put on the photo, then I understand, and you have the option to buy photos from Shutterstock. They will just look like everyone else's, and you don't have then the differentiation for your brand, and you'll just use the stock images. It's fine if you want to use that. Do that. It's your choice, right? But it's yeah, it's right. It is a difficult discussion to have, because I also completely understand that there are honest infringers, and it happened, and they hear about it the first time, and it wasn't yet in their mind, and then they end up needing to pay quite a lot because they stole the wrong photo, and then it's yeah. There's a part of me that feels sorry for that as well. It's for sure, right? It's it's not an easy part.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Here in the United States, I feel like there's, even amongst experienced photographers, I feel like there's a lack of education around understanding kind of how copyright works. I think most people don't understand once you take the image and press the shutter, the copyright is infused into the image, it's your copyright is there in the United States anyway. And then you do have the option to submit your photography through the Copyright Office, which then affords you other legal protections, but and it allows for those other civil penalties and things of that nature. But I'd be curious to hear you talk a little bit about the differences in Europe, because here it's register your copyright, but that doesn't seem like that's how that works in Europe. So what are the copyright protections look like over there?
Yes, so in Europe there's no registration process that is in any way popular or necessary. I believe there is something that you can do, but I have not heard of anybody who does it because it's completely not required. In the US, even though, yeah, indeed you get the copyright directly by pressing the shutter and like you creating the photo, it doesn't give you much unless you have registered the copyright as well, simply because you can't effectively do something. So to go to the court in the US and to get your legal fees, you need to have the registered copyright. So therefore in the US you always say, yeah, register your work, which definitely register your work. In Europe you don't need to do that at all. In Europe we have other problems though, and that is again the member states may have a different definition of like what makes a photo being protected. So it is not as easy as you just press the shutter and whatever is the outcome, that is it. You will have Germany where you have like pretty much everything is protected where you press the shutter. So it's like there's a very, very low threshold. But the European Union tried to harmonize it. So the European Union works in a way that they give out some directives and regulations and they say, this is now like the minimum standard that is applicable in all member states. And then that kind of overrules the national law. But many, even like the judges in the national laws, they actually need to learn that first, that there was some European directive, because it doesn't necessarily get translated into the national law. So the national law can be in conflict with the European directive. The European directive says for like any photograph that is original in the sense that it represents the vision of the photographer is protected. And now this is already subject to dispute in courts, and it's actually something where soon I will need help from a lot of photographers because I'll need to do a petition to the European Union to specify this. Because I just lost a case in Luxembourg where they said my photo is not protected by copyright because they said it's not creative. Even though I told them there's like a 90-minute post-processing process, it's a tilt shift photograph that was taken at a very specific time of day with planning and me traveling to Venice to take that shot. And even after explaining all that, they still said like, we don't see your own creative input in there, so it's not protected by copyright.
Interesting.
Now, that is like a big issue in Luxembourg, France, Spain, Italy. Those are the countries that have very strict criteria as to what makes a proper photograph. With Italy, copyright still being from the time of the Second World War, and since then not having been updated, so it's like you really have some troubles. But there has been like one verdict in the European Court of Justice, which is always like once that court decides, this gives you so much more strength on the national levels, where it was about a portrait photographer, and the portrait photograph was ruled as clearly being protected simply because the photographer had the choice in how he wanted to put the light, what kind of an angle to take, and also that there was no specific guidance by the client, so he didn't just follow instructions, but he decided himself on how to do these things. Therefore, in my opinion, using that same thing for landscape photography, I believe pretty much all of our landscape and cityscape photographs should be protected, but it's actually something that we need to fight for right now because I'm surprised it's being disputed, but that's the status right now.
It is an interesting thought experiment, though, because if you think about how some people approach photography, especially in kind of iconic locations and cityscapes, especially like if you go to this very specific bridge and you point your camera at this very specific subject at this time of day so that it can look exactly like the other 792 images of that subject at that time of day, like to me, there is, in my opinion, there is an argument to be made that that's not all that creative. You know what I mean? So I think that is an interesting thought process in terms of kind of differentiating between what counts as being like creative work.
I understand that argument, right? It's like there's something to it. Just where do you draw the line? So
Totally.
if
I
you
don't
take
know the
again,
answer to that.
if you take again my photograph from Krakow, right? Am I the first person to shoot that angle? No,
Probably
like,
not.
certainly not, right? Had I some photo directly in mind when I went there? Like, no. It's like I just followed the sun and I saw where's the light, where is it coming, and then it's like all the experience that you have as a photographer of like when you go out and you see that. So, is it a copy of something? No, but the very frequent argument being made in court by the opponents is like, well, look, now we search for Krakow, St. Mary Basilica, and we find like 100 photos that look very similar. And I'm like, yeah, that can be, but like, maybe they have copied me, right? Like, I mean, how do you know? That's already the first thing. I mean, my photo is now more than 10 years old, so that's already something. But then even then, like, you still make so many creative choices, like typically, right? Like you decide
focal
like,
length, time of
what's
day.
your focal length, time of day, shutter speed, and then like for me, these like going into the post processing, doing your dodge and burn, doing all these things of like how do you want to guide the viewer into the photograph, and there's like so much. So in my opinion, like maybe let the photographer like explain to the court, and like this is what I typically do now. I just explain this is my thought process so that they know. If there's a photographer that can't do that, and then they maybe really just like went and like took the instructions and they have no idea why they should took that focal length and no idea why, maybe that's then the point where you say, okay, so maybe that was really just like taking a copy of that image, maybe something like that. But like, I think the threshold should be really fairly low, and like if you can kind of argue why you took the photo in the way you took it, at that point there shouldn't be any room for discussion anymore.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like I can think of several examples of where I went to a location I'd never been to before. I hadn't seen any other images from that place before. I took a photo that I thought was really creative and interesting, and then I post it, and then like a good friend of mine will be like, oh my God, I took that exact same photo 7 years ago. Like, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess, yeah, like, part of me is like, well, that makes me not feel that special. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, that can happen. Like if you have two creative people go to the same place with similar thought processes, they might come up with something very similar, and that's very possible.
Yeah, no, I had this even, I had one photo in Iceland. I mean, of course, it's like a very investor on a location that everybody shoots, but I had thought like, oh, my composition is like, this is the one thing, and like the colors, and like, okay, interesting, that got some award at some point, and like a year later I see another photographer like posting, oh, my photo got an award, and I'm seeing him using my photo, and I'm like, how? And then I look at it again and I'm like, no, that's not my photo. It's just like, it's really, really, really similar. And I'm like, okay, well, fair game, why not? I mean, this location is there, like 500 photographers go there probably every week, and it's just like, people will come away with similar shots because some compositions are just logically to be taken because we just look for them, right?
Yeah, it is fascinating in that particular regard. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about this idea of copyright infringement. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how the increasing pressure on licensing rates, downward pressure, right, and the prevalence of free online imagery has impacted your business and the broader market for fine art and editorial photography.
Yeah. So for me, it changed that I actually completely switched the way of how I do my licensing into that I'm marketing my licenses as exclusive licenses. So I'm only selling to one company in the industry at any given time. So if any travel company wants to buy one of my photo, they will be the only ones who are allowed to use it. And that kind of puts me away from the whole stock market. So I make like a clear differentiation of like, okay, this is what stock is doing, so you just buy it, but just your advertisement might look like everyone else's. And I'm only going after clients that say, okay, we want to have like a specific campaign or anything, and we want to be sure that nobody else actually can use it. And since I have the copyright protection so well under control, I actually can tell them with reasonable certainty that I will make sure that all other copies are going to be erased from the internet. So I'm taking care that your exclusive license really stays exclusive. This for me was like kind of the only way of how to get out of this whole spiral of the downward pressure of the prices. And when I see of like other PhotoClaim clients and those that are doing well even outside of just the copyright revenue, I see similar things there. So it's like once you have a very good level of skill and like you really are having your distinctive style, that does set you apart. So there's one of our clients, he's specialized in shooting like hotels and resorts and all the luxurious places like Seychelles, Maldives. And at some point he was saying that a client was like dropping him and like taking some other stock images and like taking some cheaper images, and like a year later they came back to him because they just saw the conversion rates were completely different. So they saw that actually by using his photographs they made more sales, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, right? So it's like if your photos can drive the sales, then that's it. And this is where I think as a photographer you need to pay attention to and educate your client that you want this to stand out, because if people see the same stock photo again and again and again, at some point you just become blind to it. You will not notice the ad anymore simply because you already know the image. So to really stand out, you need to have like a perfect harmony, and like that resort photographer, he will always provide you like absolute perfectly color-coded images so that you have a consistent look throughout all the website, and that makes a huge difference compared to if you take just various stock images from different photographers, and like the level of professionalism that you can achieve by working with a good professional photographer makes a big difference. And that's kind of how I get out of that race.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And to your point, I mean, let's think about it for just a second. Like if you own like a chain of hotels in Seychelles or something like that, I'm pretty sure you can afford like a $1,500 licensing fee for an image for like a magazine or whatever you're using that image for. So I think, to your point, I find that a lot of photographers completely undervalue their photography, and it's kind of sad to see how many people are just like, well, I'm just going to dump everything into a stock photo site, and if I make like $3 or $4 next month or whatever people are making these days, I don't even know. Yeah. To me, that just seems like a really, like, it doesn't help you, it doesn't help other photographers, it doesn't help the industry. I don't know, maybe there's some one-off cases where people are doing well with stock photography nowadays, but I just can't see it.
It's, in my opinion, it's the worst thing you could possibly do. It's like to upload to Microstock, because like these stock agencies, they all have no idea who is allowed to use the photos. So we had a couple of agencies wanting to work with PhotoClaim because we're very good in finding the infringements, and we always said like, no, you cannot tell us who is allowed to use the photos. So how are we supposed to work together? And so you end up putting it on Microstock. You get cents for each sale. Like it's not even dollars anymore, it's cents. And on top of that, you will have a lot of infringements because you will have some people buying the photos, but then people will steal from the photos that bought it. So we'll have plenty of infringements, and you can no longer do anything about it because, again, what do you get if you go to court? You get what you would have sold it for. So, here are your 5 cents. Do you want to go to court to get 5 cents? It's like, so it's honestly the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you've already talked a little bit about like why you started PhotoClaim and kind of what it is and what it does. My understanding is that it's right now pretty much mostly European countries. I think I saw like you've got like Mexico and a couple other places outside of Europe that you're offering the service for. But maybe talk us a little bit about like who's it for and what the process is for joining, and maybe what kind of impact PhotoClaim has had in the photography community.
Yeah, sure. So PhotoClaim is like ideal client is someone who actually has quite a few of infringements and cannot just, or just doesn't want to cope with all this workload that would come from this. So we're not necessarily like a replacement as like a one-off case. So if you have like, you have one infringement, two infringements, and you already know about them, then basically the best idea is to go with a lawyer. So if you don't have a lawyer in a certain country, you can reach out to us. We're happy to tell you with whom we are cooperating, and you can just work with them directly. There's no need to pay us any commission for this. It's like that's not our business. What our business is like a full service that you just upload your photos. We're directly connected with Flickr, or you can upload them to our website. And then we crawl those images, and unlike our competitors, we actually manually go through those findings, and we see, okay, do we find who's responsible for this? Do we find the company that's behind it? So that then we just give you like a curated list of this is what we believe are actionable commercial infringements, and then you just click and mark this is illegal, please take care of it. Then balls back to us. We assign the lawyer, we give the case to the lawyer does the work on the end of that and tries to get the money for this, and we only get paid commission once actually the infringer got to pay. So there's no monthly subscription, there's no nothing in this regard. And so this works best for us where we have photographers that have repeated infringements, so that actually the crawling process and everything that makes sense. So we are happy for you to sign up. So we do it every 2 months. We have a waiting list, and then every 2 months we just onboard everybody who's currently on the waiting list, and we do this in a batch and bring people into the service. And then we can see in the first 3 to 6 months, okay, how much of an infringement volume is there? Does it make sense at this current stage for the corporation to work this way? And so it's a bit of more of a boutique approach that we're having there, and having deeper relationship with our photographers. But again, if you just have like a few cases, we're always happy to help in the way of just leading you to lawyers that we actually can recommend and that we trust, because this was one of also the main reasons of why I started PhotoClaim, because for me as a photographer, it was very difficult to find the good lawyers just by myself, because you're one photographer, you go to a lawyer, and like most of the time they're not really interested in having one. Now you team up with multiple photographers, and this is how PhotoClaim started. I just asked like friends in Berlin, hey, can I monitor your photos? Like maybe I find some infringements, and then I'm like, oh, now I can go to lawyers and say, hey, we're 10 photographers. And suddenly doors opened that were closed before. And still half of the lawyers that I try, I would not recommend them to anybody. You can work with them. So it's like, it just doesn't work. So it's like, it's a vetting process also on that side. So with that, I'm giving away a lot of like free information, and also on my personal photography website, I'm just starting to create a lot of guidance for photographers that want to do something about it, because even if at some point you're not like a great fit for working with PhotoClaim, but if you want to do something about it yourself, like I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Yeah, so you mentioned it's like a commission base, like you get paid if the lawyer recoups the licensing fee or whatever. Maybe walk us through like a typical case of like how much the award was, and then how much does the photographer get?
Yeah, so it depends whether or not you have your own pricing established. If you do have like your own pricing list on your website, and you say, okay, for this kind of use, I'm charging that makes things a lot easier. But that is maybe 10% of the photographers that are working with us.
Right.
So this actually happens rare. It does make things easier though. So if you don't have that, then a typical way of how we handle the processes in Europe is that we use a German lawyer, because again, the German copyright is very strong, and the European law does allow a bit to choose some jurisdiction, because the website is available also in Germany. You can access it in Germany, and therefore you can place it a bit under German jurisdiction. So we usually attempt that first out of court, and then we apply there's some an association in Germany that once a year calculates like an industry average. To be honest, I'm not really sure how they calculate that, but the courts are using this then as a reference and say like, okay, this would be for that duration on the internet or on social media, it would be this much. So let's say it's will be on social media for a year. That might be, I don't know the value right now, but let's say it's like 900 euros. That would be something that we can claim. Then typically you double the amount because they didn't mention the author. So that is something where you can get 100% surcharge for it. So you might be at 1,800, and then the lawyer goes out with that. So all this calculation is done by us and the lawyers. You don't need to worry about that. We will see how long was the infringement taking place, and we are helping with that. And then, possibly the lawyer is negotiating a bit with the infringer, and then from start to payment, like average is around like 6 months from the moment that you mark the case as illegal to the moment that it gets payment. And then, PhotoClaim gets a 45% commission of that, and the rest is being paid to your account. So we also gather it, like if different lawyers are working on it, it's all consolidated to us. You get like one billing statement from us, regardless which lawyers were working on it, so that you have as little headache as possible when it comes to like all the bookkeeping and everything. So it's like really like the one-stop shop.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like it's a very, very, very similar to Pixie, but a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more kind of white glove service than what Pixie offers. My question is like, when are you going to come to the United States, man?
I mean, we are. So we do have a cooperation in the United States, actually very well. Like we have a law firm in the US that does a really good job.
Okay, cool.
But the limitation is that the works need to be registered with copyright. So that's still the trouble in the US. But other than that, we're having a law firm there that works very well with us. And in terms of like which photographers, the photographer can be worldwide. So we've worked with photographers from all over the world. So the limitation as to what cases we take is really just coming to where's the infringer from. But it's never about where is the photographer registered. So photographers we work with worldwide.
And are you, like, is there a fee to sign up for the service, or is it purely based on the commission?
That's purely based on the commission. So feel free to give it a try, sign up, put yourself on the wait list, and then like I think in a month we have the next enrollment. So happy to then go through the photos, and we will see what we find. Fun.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think I get it. I probably do like 4 or 5 of these a year where it's like someone, like started a small business and their web designer that they hired, like did a Google image search for something. It's always the web designer's fault, right? And I actually had a really funny situation last summer where like I get this phone call from this financial planner in Denver, and he's like, "Is this Matt Payne?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." And he's like, "Oh, cool. I just got this letter from Pixie that says I owe you money, and I just wanted to ask if this was legit or not." And I was like, "Yeah, it's legit. Like, I stay out of it." And then he actually was cool about it. Like, he told me how it happened, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm happy to pay." But it's always the same story. Like, "Oh, I didn't know that." But I think a lot of people do know, and they're just trying to get away with one. Like, so what do you say to people who argue that once a photo is on the internet, it's fair game, or that exposure should be enough compensation?
I sometimes get hate for how I answer this question because I'm like, okay, I have to be straight on that. Like, there used to be a time when we were like, once a woman is wearing a short skirt, she's fair game. And it's like, no, men can't think that. It's like we have made that step, right? There is no there's no such thing. It's just like, just because a woman is wearing attractive clothing doesn't give you any right to do anything, nothing. And we understand that, we accept that, finally, thankfully. And with photography, it's like, how on earth do you think like, oh, photos on the internet, I can just take it? It's like, you can't.
Doesn't make sense.
It's like, there's just nothing on it. And it's like, you don't go on the street and like, there's a car and like, maybe the door is unlocked. Doesn't mean you can drive the car. No, you can't. So it's like, everywhere we have this common sense, and then suddenly there's like a photo on the internet and like all this common sense is gone. And I'm like, where does this even come from? It's like, I don't even know how this got started, to be honest,
Yeah, to make it worse, it seems like a lot of the big tech companies are perpetuating that thought process. Like, oh, if you post it on Twitter or Facebook, like it's fair game. People can do whatever they want with it, including train their AI on it and all that kind of fun stuff. And to me, it's like, come on, like that just doesn't seem fair, right?
Absolutely. So no, I don't know where to get started, but this is like, it comes up every single time when it goes to the court. Thankfully, this is something where the court, like I haven't seen any judge doing any nonsense on this kind of topic. So this is really something where it's like, no, it is not fair game. Just because you find it on the internet, you still have to do your due diligence. And like there is like, I don't know, UK has like innocent infringer exception, but it got like really, really strongly defined of like what counts as an innocent infringer. And you really need to have very, very good reason for believing that it's in the public domain, such as it needs to be clearly stated that the photo is in the public domain, and you need to be able to prove that this was shown wherever you found that. And like it's, there are clear requirements on that, but for some reason it doesn't yet sink into most people's brains.
Yeah, it's wild. I was super curious. This is like a very emerging thing that's happening and that I'm seeing more and more of. But in fact, there's this one specific guy that's doing this constantly. He's taking people's photographs from their websites or 500px or Flickr or whatever he can find them. And then he'll run it through, I don't know, maybe like Stable Diffusion or Midjourney or something. And then he'll like tweak it a little bit in Photoshop to kind of give it his own kind of spin. But like if you compare like the original photo with his photo, like his AI creation, like everything lines up. Like the composition is identical. The light in the sky is in the exact same spot. The waves on the, like there's this one photo in particular I have in my mind, like the waves on the rocks are in the exact same spot as the original photo. And then he's putting it out there commercially on his stuff as his creation, his photo. Have you come across any cases yet where this sort of copyright infringement is being pursued at all?
No. We had some cases where it was about that you would have like a painter actually doing physical painting and just painting off a photograph.
Which seems similar.
Which is a very similar thing. Well, at least there's a bit more effort involved in that.
A lot more effort, come on.
But it's still a similar thing. But I'm not sure even how that got resolved. So I must say that's not my expertise. I hope it is protected, but I also know there's like when it comes to AI, we'll have a lot of issues because of like if you use couple of photos together and you create something new out of that, then you have like in some countries this 10% rule that if it's less than 10% of the work being used, then you can make something new out of it and so on. So it's like I think this is going to be an issue, but to be very fair, I don't have a deep knowledge on that. So for me, I'm looking on the direct one-to-one infringements. That's my specialty.
Yeah, it's actually something I would love to see someone try to pursue, because this person I have in my mind, I don't even know if he's a real person. I mean, obviously it's a real person like doing it, but I don't even know if his persona is real. It's like this just guy that like even his avatar is an AI avatar, and he just goes out, he finds people's photos, He throws them through this AI algorithm, does some stuff to them in Photoshop to clean it up, puts his watermark signature at the bottom of it, posts it to Instagram. He's got like 80,000 Instagram followers. And of course, as you can expect, like everyone's like, oh my God, these are amazing, incredible. And then like you can find the original image that his thing was based on and you compare them and you're like, obviously this was the original piece of work that you'd use to create your photo in AI. And I wouldn't be surprised if this particular individual has found a way to monetize that somehow, right? So
I guess, yeah.
I would love to see photographers come together and like fight back against that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the best thing I've done on Instagram was just to put AI onto my blocked word list. So any post that has AI in it, I just don't see it anymore. So at least if they, put hashtags AI or anything, I'm just like, it's not in my stream anymore. I don't have to see it because I don't know this stuff.
This guy doesn't claim it. I mean, he's like, this is my landscape photograph that I made.
Okay, so it's a photograph even. It's not even AI for his view. Okay.
I mean, he doesn't call it AI.
Okay.
Clearly, it's obviously AI. Well, it's obvious to us that it's AI. To the general public, they're like, that's an amazing photograph, right? In fact, I put that example on my Facebook feed a couple of weeks ago, and I had 20, 30 photographers tell me that it's not AI. They're like, oh no, it's real. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like the AI added trees to this sea stack where trees don't exist. And you would know that if you've ever visited that place. Come on, man, like use your head.
Yeah.
But it's a wild time right now in copyright land, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Nico, I've got only a couple more questions for you. I understand that you recently made a pretty big licensing sale of one of your images through locationscout.net. And you'd mentioned to me that you want to give away 2 annual subscriptions to that particular platform today for our listeners. What makes that platform a valuable resource for photographers, and kind of just tell us what it is to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So Location Scout is a platform where you can find photo locations. So you can share locations and you can find them. So it's a platform made by a friend of mine, Manuel Becker, who is a photographer himself, and I think it started when he traveled to Chicago and he wanted to have there was some iconic scenes in mind and he couldn't find where this was taken from, and then he was like, it would be nice when you're traveling to have better access to know where are some of the scenic locations, so that if you have only very little time in a certain place, you don't miss out on some major spots that you wouldn't find interesting, and how to get there. And so he started that platform, and by now I think he recently posted that there's 170,000 photographers or users on that website. And you can upload your photos, mark the spot. I know that's already a controversial topic, whether or not you'll want to do that. But for me, I find that, a very tremendously valuable resource when it comes to researching places. Again, mostly I'm doing city-related photography, culture-related photography, so it is therefore probably not as important as for the conservation aspect as it is with some of the landscapes. But there it's really helpful if sometimes I have only one day in a town to find my way around of where are some good scenic spots, so that I have something as an anchor where I go to, right? And then I typically end up walking and I end up taking shots that I just find on the way, but it gives me kind of locations to plan where I walk to when I'm going around. And likewise, that it even works for road trips really well. I did that in the US, where I had only gave myself 48 hours to drive through New England, and okay, let's drive. And ever so often I pulled over and I looked on the map, and then you see what's within a 50-mile radius, and then I could see there are some interesting spots, and I'm just taking a detour and going there, which I probably otherwise absolutely wouldn't have done because it wouldn't have come to my mind. And so this is where I like it in terms of planning my trips. And using it when I'm actually in a location to see if there's something cool around me. But what happened now with the licensing sale was that on the website recently got implemented that you can reach out to the photographer very directly over the website and ask for a licensing deal. And that what happened with a photo that I uploaded from Dublin, and they wanted to make a city guide in print and use my photo for the cover. And then I talked with Manuel of like, okay, so who is actually using Location Scout for that? Because for me it was obvious that photographers are using it, but I was a bit surprised that licensing is really happening for it. And I asked him like, how frequently is this going on? And like, is this something really normal? And there's a surprising big number of like companies that want to have like photos from a very specific location, and then they use this platform because it's very easy then to find, okay, we want a photo from here, so I just look on the map and see, okay, here are images from around, and then they can contact the photographers directly for licensing. And that's traffic that normally wouldn't have come to me because they didn't find the photo on Google, they found it on Location Scout. And therefore I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool to have as a resource as a photographer. Because also if you think, I don't know, people made their wedding proposal in a certain location, right? And they will want to have memories from there. That's something that I sell most of my photos to when it comes to prints. It's like typically related to strong memories that you're having. And if those people then look for that specific location because this is where they were sitting on the cliff and I happen to have a photo that was taken from that location, they can find it there. Yeah, the website doesn't take any commission for the licensing. So actually all the money that I charged the client for it ended up in my pocket. And so what I did was I bought a few gift cards because I felt compelled to give back because I wouldn't have made that sale without Location Scout. And you know, while all the other platforms charge like what 80%, 60%, whatever, and Manuel is doing this and charges the photographer nothing, I found this pretty amazing, and so that's why I feel like giving back. So if anybody wants to give Location Scout a try, it's like it's free. You can completely use the website. It has an app as well, and then the premium function of the app is like a lot about actually being able to use the map and see what's around you. And as you said, I'm giving away 2 of those gift cards just for listeners of this podcast. So if you listen it to this point and you manage to get through this conversation to here, just shoot me a message on Instagram and tell me that you will want to have it. And then let's say 3 weeks after the podcast aired, I will select 2 of the people that wrote to me and give the gift cards away.
I love that. Well, thank you for thinking of us in that way, and hopefully you'll get lots of people messaging you for that. You mentioned that it's a little controversial, and I'm glad you brought that up because obviously within the city context, it's not necessarily as problematic in terms of like, you know, you're not going to damage the asphalt and like there's bathrooms and there's parking and all of those kind of things to handle people going to those places, hopefully. And I guess what I would say is like for other people using platforms similar to that or that platform specifically, before you upload a location, I think just be mindful about that particular aspect of the place that you're uploading. Like look around, and if for whatever reason 1,000 other people wanted to go there tomorrow, like could it handle it or not? And I think that's, to me, that's kind of the litmus test of whether or not it makes ethical sense to include something like that in a publicly facing database.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that. I have no conclusive opinion because I see like, you know, there's a lot of pros, a lot of cons. To some extent, I'm like, I don't know, when you're going to Dolomites and you have this Lago di Braies, where it's like, you know, all the Instagrammers are coming there and they all have to go in this boat and they're all in the boathouse having the boats lining up and they all take the same photo. But then you walk like 10 minutes and you are completely by yourself there, right? Even though it's such a scenic location. So I'm wondering if sometimes we worry too much about that actually happening because people are simply still too lazy. So as soon as there's like a bit of walking involved, people will already not necessarily do that in masses. But
I mean, I can only tell you from my own personal experience, some of the locations here in Colorado where I had that same thought process, and like literally a 3-mile hike to 10, from like 9,000 feet in elevation to 11,000 feet in elevation, and it went from getting like 3 people a day to like 1,000 a day, all driven by Instagram stuff. Like it can happen. If it's compelling enough of a place that people want to see it, like it can happen. And of course that location doesn't have trash or toilets, or I mean it's high alpine tundra. So like people go there and they just poop everywhere and toilet paper's everywhere, and like it's just a disaster. So it can happen. So it's just be mindful. That's all. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, Nico, last question. Who do you recommend for the podcast?
So since we just talked about Location Scout, let me recommend Manuel, the founder of Location Scout, Manuel Becker. I think you could explore more on that question of like what locations to share, what not, and so on. I think it could be a cool conversation. Then Raphael Pons from Photopills. I think that would be cool to have him on. I know they're still busy of doing the next iteration of what comes out of Photopills, hopefully soon, and I bet would be a good podcast as well. And
they got some really cool stuff with Photopills Camp. Like they do some really neat excursions, and I think it's a cool concept.
Definitely. And last but not least, Francesco Gola. He's good friend of mine, photographer, where I say his approach, we have a very similar slow approach to photography of really taking the place in, and yet our works are so different, with him completely mastering and specializing on the seascapes and just taking fascinating shots of all the seascapes. But I believe it would be fantastic conversation on all the work that goes into such photographs.
Yeah, and he recently wrote like a script for Wendy that helps you like understand whether it kind of predicts whether or not there's going to be a good sunrise or sunset based on different data points. It's kind of cool.
Definitely.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. Yeah, for sure. Well, Nico, this has been super fun, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was amazing.
Awesome. Well, cool. We'll definitely put links to everything in the show notes. But thanks again for joining us today.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining me for another super fun episode. If you enjoyed this conversation with Nico Trinkaus, don't miss the bonus episode now live on Patreon, where we dig deeper into his experience with congenital aphantasia, what it's like to be a visual artist who can't visualize images in his mind. It's a fascinating look at creativity, memory, and how photography can become a tool for seeing the world in a uniquely powerful way. A huge thank you to our newest Patreon supporter, Julia Haley. Your support helps to keep this show going, and it means the world to me. And hey, if you're not already subscribed to my email newsletter, now's the time. Next week, we'll be announcing the winner of our FLM tripod giveaway during my episode with Klaus Axelson. Sign up using the link in the show notes to be entered to win. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.